Hi, everyone. This is Charles Hoskinson broadcasting live from warm, sunny Colorado. Today is October 5th, 2023, and I wanted to make a video to talk a little bit about Hydra, prior comments, and some unpleasant commentary that people have been sharing. There are a few people over the internets who are claiming that there's a great degree of dishonesty, for myself in particular, but others in our organization about the throughput of Hydra and prior historical statements. So, facts are tricky things, and I know people on the internet don't like them, but let's go ahead and look at some source material. And let's talk about Hydra as a project and where it's going. So I'm going to share my screen here. All right. First things first, here is a blog post that Agalos Kaiasis wrote back in 2020 talking about Hydra. Experimental validation of the Hydra head protocol. As a first step towards experimentally validating the performance of the Hydra head protocol, we implemented a simulation. The simulation is parameterized by the time required by individual actions, such as validating transactions, verifying signatures, and carry out realistic and time-correct simulation of a cluster of distributed nodes forming a head. This results in realistic transaction confirmation time and throughput calculations. We see that a single Hydra head achieves up to roughly 1,000 TPS. So by running 1,000 heads in parallel, one for each stake pool of the Shelley release, for example, we should achieve 1 million TPS. So this is basically this is hypothetical. So it says, so can we just reach any TPS? In theory, the answer is a yes, but there's more to the story. And we discuss more to the story, all kinds of things there. Okay, and this was written 3 years ago by the chief scientist of the organization, not an offhand lie from me. Now, let's take a look here. I have a TPS chart that was generated by Philip Kant, who was an engineer who worked with us at the time. And this is actual data generated from a simulation that we ran locally showing concurrent TPS at about 1,000 TPS. Now, does this make sense? Well, when we look at competing literature, throughput limitations of the off-chain payment networks, a pretty credible group of researchers here, they achieve using the Lightning Network, which is a simpler network, an order of about 10,000 transactions per second. If we look at other literature about what can you do with Byzantine atomic broadcast, Chop, which is a state machine replication protocol, 43 million messages per second with an average latency of 3.6 seconds. So lots of literature floating around, competing literature, more fundamental protocols, simulation data that shows that you can achieve high throughput with these channels. Now, 3 years have passed. We've all learned lots of things, and you have the Hydra website you can go to right here. And actually, here's the live roadmap of Hydra Head, where we're actually implementing in a completely open source and public way on mainnet, not a test net, Hydra. And there's a large ecosystem that's starting to form around Hydra. And you can see feature by feature various things that they're focused on and what they're doing. You see, at any given time, you can sculpt these protocols to maximize throughput. And I will remind everybody that throughput means something different in a UTXO system than it means in an account-based system. If that is lost on you, let's go ahead, share the screen again, and let's go to eutxo.org. Okay, one of my favorite websites because it gets the point across again and again and again and again. This is a live view of the Cardano network from a transactional perspective, block by block. So this block was empty, and we're just going to wait a few seconds, and new block has arrived. Let's take a look at it, see what's in it. Okay. Few transactions in it. So this block right here with 384 outputs is one transaction. 384 things happened in that one transaction. And that's the same as this transaction right here with 3 outputs. So 384 on that one, 3 outputs in that one. You know, so we only fill 44% of it. So you can go very fast with this particular network. And these transactions are only going to get more dense and have more things happening per transaction. Cardano is not a TPS system. It's a transaction per transaction system. And every one of those outputs can be more sophisticated things, scripts, proofs, not just the raw movement of value. So what does 1,000 TPS mean? It just means that you can take a very simple payload, put it into a channel, run those channels in parallel, and then do lots of them. But in practice, does that make any sense? It would make sense in a video game. It would make sense in micro tipping. It makes sense for a variety of off-chain applications. But that's not where Cardano's at. Cardano is doing large NFT drops. Cardano is doing DEX transactions. Cardano is doing Oracle transactions, JED transactions, complex, rich smart contracts with lots of things going on. So what happened over a 3-year period is that Hydra pivoted a little bit, and it pivoted into, let's build some middleware that it's going to be really easy for you as a developer to plug into your application, work with Plutus to help get a lot of that complex logic that you should not run on the main network, but run it in a different network, like the batching, like the voting, like the event-oriented programming, the event-based programming, where events happen and you have to be around 24/7 to pick them up and do something. Multi-sig, all kinds of stuff that you'd like to run in some sort of other network, and you could build stuff on top. So what's happened is an open source ecosystem is forming around that concept, and what they're doing is they're building applications, and it's driving the roadmap of Hydra. Hydra is evolving, and it's being done in the public. Everybody can see it. It's running on mainnet right now, and year by year, those types of applications will foment and become very, very standard. Now, what this does is it lowers the overall load of things that are happening on the Cardano main network, which is the intent. Now, at any given time, you can push protocol development to massively increase throughput if you really wanted to. But what use cases would we want for that? There might be a collection of dApps where that makes sense, and what they would do is build those capabilities on top of the floor that's been constructed. The point of prior comments was that people kept trying to advertise in 2000, we have this many TPS and we have this many TPS. What we were trying to say is that's not how these systems work in practice. Yes, you absolutely can achieve high TPS, but it's a pointless empiric metric. It means nothing. If one transaction can have 343 things happen in it, wouldn't you much rather have 5,000 things happen in that transaction and have 10 of those as opposed to 1,000 TPS of atomic transactions where you only change one thing? Get a lot more throughput that way, and also use a lot less space. Solana is over 200 terabytes in size. It's approaching a petabyte if it continues to go down this path, because everything's on-chain. And that's what you have to do to achieve in these current generation of protocols, high throughput at the layer 1. Now, there's plenty of protocols we've been investigating, like Ouroboros Laos, which is the input endorsers workstream, which will allow mass parallelization and high-speed layer 1. But we're also looking at rollups as an ecosystem, sidechains as an ecosystem, and yes, evolutions of Hydra. Made a 45-minute scalability video about these things. But what people do is they take a single quote, a single paragraph, a single notion that was there to elucidate a broader point, emphasize that, and then ascribe dishonesty, which is extraordinary to me. And given that so many people are commenting on this and saying things and spreading misinformation about it, at some point it warrants an explanation. Everything I say, there's a source material behind it, either a blog post, a simulation, a paper, something there. I just showed my sources, written by people who are held to high standards and produce evidence. I don't really appreciate people just running around saying, oh, well, he's just making it up. And his former employees, they PM me and tell me, oh, he's just lying. It's not okay. And it's not fair. And it has to stop. The internet has become a cesspool where anything goes and misinformation spreads and people absorb it. And it does have an impact. In the Ethereum community today, there are still developers who honest to God, believe that Cardano can only process one transaction per block for a smart contract. They actually believe this. And when you show them all these dApps, they say they can't exist. You can't do that in extended UTXO. And we said, well, here's the code. It's running live on mainnet. How are we doing this? It must be fake. There must be some smoke and mirrors here because they can't get past information that was lied about in 2021. And what does this mean? It means that when they're recommending systems to people, they say, don't even consider Cardano. It can't work by design. Meanwhile, we have the single best paradigm for on-chain, off-chain, and for side chains. That's channel isomorphism is awesome for where the entire industry is going. We have the single best paradigm for applying rollups long-term. Why? Because rolling up these stateless outputs in a UTXO model is a lot easier than this global state system of accounts and all the complexity that exists there and trying to manage that. Non-determinism is the enemy of distributed systems. We're on the deterministic side. So this has a real impact on adoption. It has a real impact on people's opinion of the system overall. And every time a lie is said, it takes 10 times as much effort to undo that in people's memory. So when people run around and say Hydra has failed, we lied about Hydra, there's no way to achieve any of these performance claims that are said, well, then what they're really doing is they're taking the hard work of dozens of people and everybody building on it, and they're saying it just doesn't exist. It is not currently an emphasis of the Hydra protocol to try to maximize throughput. Doesn't make any sense in this network. We're not even using all of the layer 1 throughput at the moment. It's much more so about enabling the applications that people want to have and giving them a much more graceful way to transition to off-chain and on-chain and do things like batching, do things like all the nice applications that people want, like GameFi and Metaverse and NFT drops and these types of things. And these are the discussions that the team are having. This is the direction of the technology. And you can go straight to the source material, GitHub, and see that. But people ignore that. And they say, oh, well, because you don't have a channel that's running, I guess, spam transactions 1,000 per second, obviously that's a failed project. Okay, well, who needs that? Where's that going to come from? What use case is currently in the system that requires that level of throughput? And also, where's all that stored then? Who's paying the price of that? It just doesn't make sense, you know, and we've made videos throughout the years and had discussions throughout the years about these things, and the nuance is lost. So every now and then I just got to make a video, set the record straight, and say that there is evidence for all these things, especially given that they're deployed and live on chain. Simulations were always done. Anytime you look at a fundamental technology, you always do the simulation and you look at the output and the result. Of course, they come to me. They come to a lot of other people. There's a lot of other discussions that have been had. And these were all public and published years ago. No one seems to care when they lie. So this can be a reference point for people to post and refer back to when you see the lie, because we as a community have to be vigilant about these things and hold people accountable when they do so. You see, open source projects are complex, they're multifaceted, and technology is ever evolving. If you look at the history of Cardano, some of the core assumptions we made have stayed true, and that gives us a long-term competitive advantage. Liquid non-custodial staking with Ouroboros is the greatest example of that, whereas Ethereum went down a very different road, which I believe personally is going to centralize their network and create unpleasant regulatory realities, especially in Europe. When you look at extended UTXO, it's very easy to graft on an accounts model. But at the core with extended UTXO, you get all the benefits that Satoshi saw back in 2009 and why he chose that system over an accounts-based system, which is a simpler system. And those benefits include the ability to seamlessly move on-chain and off-chain through isomorphic state channels. They include predictable pricing. They include easier rollups. They include being able to batch large amounts of activity together. All you got to do is just increase the sophistication of your proof languages and your underlying script language. Now, it takes a while for these things to evolve, and you'll notice that Plutus 1 is a very different animal from Plutus 2. In many cases, there's a 10x in transaction size reduction from Plutus 1 to 2. Something was multiple kilobytes and it went down a factor of 10. Most app developers have upgraded to Plutus 2, and you can see those amazing savings in just one generation of the language. Imagine where we'll be in 3 years to 5 years with continual evolution of these things. Imagine where we'll be when the things on the wire are not just scripts, but complex proofs involving snarks that are a roll-up of many off-chain activities, and how much throughput a system like that can get. You don't change the underlying core of extended UTXO. And yes, Hydra is another case study in this. And over time, as the years go by, it gets more sophisticated. A tail protocol is added in. Provisions for high throughput are added in finally when applications require that. Interhead communication, there's plenty of great protocols for that. And it just becomes an indispensable piece of middleware that developers have, alongside all the other middleware that developers have in the ecosystem. Mithril is another great example of that. Entire blockchains are built to try to achieve what Mithril has achieved for us. It's already now running on mainnet. People are playing around with it. Next generation's already under design, and at some point it works its way into the standard node as part of the software stake pool operators run. There are almost 200 papers behind Cardano, a massive ecosystem of researchers and engineers. Were they all just wasting their time? Were all of them just doing nothing? Nothing practical about these things? No. The paradigm itself was built for the future. And it takes time to open up and realize, and together with the dApp developers on Cardano, the government's advancements on Cardano, and everything along the line, all of these things together is how you evolve an ecosystem. Bitcoin would die to have what we have. And frankly, Ethereum is chasing it, and they can't get there because of poor design decisions with the EVM and the account model. It's very easy through sidechains for us to borrow what they have. It's a lot harder for them to get what we have. Just scale. And that's a matter of time. And so when you look at our future, it's very bright. And I believe very strongly in the design choices that were made. And these were not easy design choices. The use of formal methods, writing AGDIS specifications, verifying that the code is correct, all of the property-based testing that's done, the use of Haskell as a base language, and all the things that had to be done to make that protocol great. It's not perfect. There's certainly mega improvements that need to be made with interfaces, a better data availability story. We got to get the sidechain story out. Oh, finality, sure. We have plans already to know how to turn that from 12 hours, 10 minutes on sidechain transactions. It's stuff that comes iteratively. And yeah, it has to be more open source. There has to be more collaboration from many different companies. And that was the point of Intersect. But every step of the way, nobody gives up. They don't go home. We've been working on this bloody thing since 2015 as a movement. Literally millions of lines of code. And no matter how many bear markets come, how many cycles come, people show up every day and work hard on this thing. But then we get called liars. We're told we're being dishonest. That's the nature of cryptocurrencies. And that's what makes this space so remarkably difficult to be in for people. Because you do everything, you tell everybody up front what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish. You tell everybody up front where you're at. You write it down in a rigorous way. You go and fucking do it. And then people claim you didn't even do anything. You're just a wallet. Because they can't understand what's been accomplished. And the only metric they have is price. And it's one big video game for them. Meanwhile, it's the life's work for other people. And then they say, why don't we have mainstream adoption? Why do people not come in? Well, if you're punished arbitrarily for picking one standard over another standard, why would you invest? Why would you put effort into the ecosystem and space? And if you're trying to make contributions to an open source project and those contributions are ignored, how long does that have to happen before people say we don't want to be there? And if the people have been around for nearly a decade now, working hard every single day, don't get any benefit of the doubt. year after year after year, then what chance does a normal person have who's just fair weather? You get what you want, how you act, and we're just going to keep chipping away at it. Hydra's not going anywhere. It just keeps getting better. Mithril keeps getting better. We keep making advancements to the theory of extended UTXO, to the theory of Ouroboros, and there's all kinds of extensions that have been written down and are actually in active development right now, from finality gadgets to Genesis, other such things. And there's a rich strategy for sidechains that's coming that I think people will be very happy with. And there's already great technology that's now being built in the sidechain layer. It's not hypothetical. Great teams are doing that, like Midnight, for example. The drum beats louder and louder. It takes a village, each and every one of us. We have to defend what we've created. Cardano is a global ecosystem. It's got millions of people. When you see dishonest things, step up and fight for it. We have to protect what we've achieved together. And we can do so easily because at the end of the day, we're standing on bedrock. Every single protocol in Cardano is based on some form of peer-reviewed foundation. Thousands of discussions, difficult engineering conversations with reason and logic behind why they were built, and rigorous specifications. This was the life's work of so many engineers, some still here, some now somewhere else. And we owe it to all of them and all the time that they put in to make sure that the work is referred to fairly and accurately. Just that simple. So now you have a video. Anytime you see anything about Hydra and these people, just post this one and we'll keep chipping away at it. I'll see everybody at the Cardano Summit. Cheers.